Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast about gardening, botanical history, and literature. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is October 7th. Today in botanical history, we celebrate a beloved Indiana poet, the Engelmann Botanical Club, and their display of fall flowers over 120 years ago, and an Australian author who suffered from asthma as a child. We'll hear an excerpt from the New York Times best-selling author, Karen White, and we grow that garden library today with a tremendous book by a modern plantsman and nurseryman. And then we'll wrap things up with a poignant poem from a writer and critic who said his goodbyes through his writing. Well, I wanted to just start today's show by telling you this little surprise that I got in a garden book that I ordered. I had gotten a copy in the mail yesterday of Garden Making and Keeping by Hugh Fendley. And it's in mint condition. I got really lucky. I can't remember how much I spent on it, but I remember thinking it wasn't much. In any case, right inside, it says that this book was owned by Helen M. Pond, and she dated it. It was March 10th, 1932. So I took Max to the dog park, and I sometimes bring a garden book with me. And when he's having fun with other dogs, I will try to read a little bit. And so here I had this book, and I started thumbing through, and what do I find but a little Christmas card? And the card says, "Merry Christmas, and I'm glad we're related." And then the little poem says, "I'm happy that we are related, as I shall always be. But whether related or only acquainted, you still would be you to me." And then there is this adorable little note. Somebody had impeccable handwriting here. The initials, I think, are EBS. And she writes, "Dear Helen, Mother and I are still moving about. This Christmas, we are at one of the most beautiful seaside resorts on the Pacific. I am an intern or student dietitian, and then I think it says at the Scripps Metabolic Clinic. Came here after getting my degree in June." And she says, "Elwood is still in New Mexico. Both of his boys are having whooping cough." So there you go. A total gem from the past. Anyway, it was just adorable, and I put it right back in the book where I found it. I'm keeping it, and I'm going to try to track down Helen's descendants. Maybe one of them would like to get that little note. It's just so cute. And plus, I love doing that little genealogy work on the side. So that's always fun. The other book that I got that I didn't take a picture of for the Facebook group, but it's a great book. It's called Maine Memories by Elizabeth Coatsworth. So I plan on reading that one as well this week. This one will be a very quick little read. But these books that are kind of just like almost like thumbing through somebody's diary, they're fun, and they don't take so long to read. You can dip in and out of them. You don't have to even read them in order if you don't want to. So I love that. I love these kinds of little books, and I am really looking forward to reading both of these. So again, I get a lot of my used books on Abe Books. I know I talked to a listener a while back, I think earlier this year, and she said that she has great luck finding used books on eBay, and sometimes she can even get them cheaper than if she were getting them on the regular used book website. So, hey, I mean, whatever works, however you need to find your used books. But all right, it's time for today's curated news. Today's curated news comes to us from a magazine that I don't read that often, but I did find this really neat article, and I wanted to share it with you today. It's called Prairie strips prevent soil erosion, help pollinators. This is a post that was written by Fran O'Leary, and it was from a magazine called Farm Progress online. Now, I wanted to share a few of these key points. If you don't know what a prairie strip is, imagine you've got a field, you're growing your monocrop in there, and then you might have a little break in the field and you're going to create a strip of just like a wildflower area. And that's what a prairie strip is. They let it return back to the wild. They're growing native plants in there, prairie plants. And that's very restorative. You bring in all kinds of insects and wildlife. And so this was an article, and they were interviewing a farmer out of Wisconsin. And this gentleman has 4 prairie strips on his farm, and he talks about how he established it. His name is Dan Stoffel. He's 70. He graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Madison with a degree in biochemistry, so smart guy. Married his high school sweetheart, and then started farming in 1975. In 2015, he learned about prairie strips. He had a conversation with his conservation director. He goes, when Greg approached me about the prairie strips 6 years ago, he said he needed us to commit to having them for 5 years. And then he now says, but they're never coming out. And I thought you'd get a kick out of hearing the types of things that are growing in this prairie strip. So included in his list of plants are black-eyed Susans, asters, goldenrod, Canada wild rye, big blue stem, switchgrass, milkweed, great for the pollinators, for the monarch butterflies, golden Alexander, another great one for the swallowtails and for the pollinators. Actually, most of these actually are. Bee balm, cup plant, one of my personal favorites, butterfly weed, lupin or lupine, and purple prairie clover. This would be gorgeous. So wonderful. No wonder he's loving it. Now, Dan didn't have to pick all of this. His conservation guy, Greg, did all of that for him. And, right here, it says that they put this mix together specifically for the monarchs. So the monarch caterpillars are using the milkweed, but then the butterflies, the adults, can use all of the other types of pollinator plants. So that's great. Now, one of the things that I thought was kind of a charming little tidbit about Dan, and that maybe explains why he was so open to doing this, is the fact that he has been a beekeeper since he was a kid back in 4-H. And so he's got 12 hives all over the farm. And of course, they're enjoying the pollinator strips. Clearly, the butterflies are enjoying the pollinator strips. So he is a guy that cares about insects, understands this issue of breaking up these monocrops, adding more diversity, adding more species, and even in these small areas, it makes a huge, huge difference. Now, I had no idea before I read this exactly how big these prairie strips are, and I suppose it can vary by farm. But in Dan's case, each of these prairie strips are measuring 30 feet wide and 1,400 feet long. So they're pretty substantial. Now, one last little tidbit about this particular farm is that Dan is a fan of no-till farming, and he's been doing that since 1988 as well. This is just a single farm in Wisconsin, but it's a good data point to know about. It's a good data point to reference. Farming is changing. Farmers are changing, just like gardeners have gone through big changes in the last couple of decades in terms of the way we garden, hopefully using less or no pesticides, going organic, incorporating more natives, planting milkweed, trying to help pollinators, and so forth. Anyway, I feel like I haven't done this article justice. There's a ton of information here, kind of a neat story. So if you have any interest in this, if you want to read about this pollinator strip, or I was even thinking about, you could repurpose this and maybe not use it in a farming application, but you could use it in a school application or on a city boulevard, something along those lines. There's so many ways that you could incorporate pollinator strips, or I guess what they're calling them here, prairie strips. Either one, right? It works. Pollinator strip, prairie strip, potato. So anyway, I will put this in the Facebook group and you can read this post for yourself. You can also share it with anybody you think might be interested in this as a topic. I think it's a great one. You can find it in the Facebook group by searching for any of those keywords. So prairie, strips, pollinators, any of those will work. And then this article will pop up and you can read all about it. Now, one other article that I shared in the group that I thought was really cute was the local farm that was turning part of the farm into a glow in the dark pumpkin town. So they created these little house fronts, these fronts of houses that are made with pumpkins. So they had a saloon, a sheriff's office, and let's see here, a general store. Very, very cute. I mean, this I thought was adorable. So check that out as well. If you've got a pumpkin patch or a pumpkin farm or you're looking for ideas, this is a really, really good one. And if you want to check out that image, just search for the word pumpkin and that post will pop up. Okay. All right. If you'd like to join the Facebook group that I created for listeners of the show, it's very easy to do. Just head on up to the search bar in Facebook where you're going to look for your old friend and instead type in Daily Gardener Community. Then there'll be 3 little questions that pop up about the podcast. You can also include a little note to me. Hello, my Moorhead listener. I just had a listener join the group and she was from Moorhead, Minnesota. So that was fun to see. So welcome. Always good to have a local listener. And, you can send me a little note. You can let me know your thoughts on the podcast or anything else like that. And then I will admit you into the group. I'm the person that reads all of that. And I love meeting and getting to know listeners of the show. It's always great to talk to a fellow gardener. All right. It's time for today's botanical history. Here's botanical history for today, October 7th. Today is the birthday of James Whitcomb Riley. He was an American writer and poet, and he was born on this day, October 7th, in 1849. In Indiana, James is especially beloved, and he's remembered as the Hoosier poet. James wrote in dialect, in the voice of the common man, and the majority of his over 1,000 poems were often sentimental or humorous, or both. James managed to have a successful writing career despite a lifelong struggle with alcohol. Today, in James's hometown of Greenfield, Indiana, the Riley Festival is touted as Indiana's largest 4-day gathering. The event started in 1925 and takes place the first or second weekend in October, and it's going on right now. The Riley Days Festival traditionally ends with a flower parade, and children place flowers around a 1918 Myra Reynolds Richards statue of James Whitcomb Riley. It's located on the county courthouse lawn. James wrote several poems about flowers and gardens, roses, you name it. You can probably find a poem about almost anything. He was so prolific. But one of his most famous poems that you might have heard of is called When the Frost is on the Pumpkin. Now, I was thinking about reading that poem today, but then I actually found one that I personally liked better. And so I wanted to share that with you. I'm not going to share the entire thing. I'm just going to share 2 verses. But the poem is called When the Green Gets Back in the Trees. And here's how it goes. In spring, when the green gets back in the trees, and the sun comes out and stays, and your boots pulls on with a good tight squeeze, and you think of your barefoot days, when you art to work and you want to not, and you and your wife agrees, it's time to spade up the garden lot when the green gets back in the trees. when the whole tail feathers of winter time is all pulled out and gone, and the sap it thaws and begins to climb, and the sweat it starts out on a feller's forehead, but getting down at the old spring on his knees. I kind of like just a loafer and round when the green gets back in the trees. There you go, little James Whitcomb Riley for you today. All right. And it was also on this day in 1900 that the St. Louis Post-Dispatch out of St. Louis, Missouri, shared a nice long article about the flowers that could still be found blooming around the city. And the article started out this way. The wildflower exhibition held by the Engelmann Botanical Club in the public library building gave the observer a striking idea of the beauty and profusion of the uncultivated flowers which can be found in the vicinity of St. Louis in the autumn. To many, it was a revelation. Miss Ellen C. Clark, president of the Engelmann Botanical Club, wrote, "The table that attracted the children the most was that on which the fruits and seeds were collected. The pods of the milkweed and dogbane families, with their hairy seed, those of the trumpet creeper and others, showed them how seed could fly. The berries of the dogwood, buckthorn, the coralberry, the pokeberry had each its special attraction. The Engelmann Botanical Club has had only a short existence. It started a little more than 2 years ago, and when a name for the club was considered, it seemed most fitting to honor Dr. Engelmann, the eminent St. Louis physician who made time in the midst of a large practice to do botanical work that distinguished him among the botanists of the world." And then J.H. Kellogg also wrote about this event, and he wrote, "Besides the large exhibits of the gentians, lobelias, asters, and goldenrods, there were others equally as attractive, although the cardinal lobelia is one of the most glaringly beautiful wildflowers to be found. And white snakeroot, growing in rich, shady woods with white flowers, is a very pretty plant, blooming until late in the fall. Mist flower, with its delicate blue flowers, is also very beautiful. It's found growing in low grounds and is blooming until cold weather. And then Spanish needle is one of our common fall flowers, sometimes covering low meadows with its bright yellow flowers and along roadsides almost everywhere. And then he ends with this. Another group of plants that will attract your attention if you take a walk through the woods in almost any direction during the fall of the year are the desmodiums, or the beggar's ticks, or beggar lice, not on account of their showy flowers, but of their seeds, which will stick to you closer than a brother, as anyone can testify who has taken a walk in the country at this season of the year. So there you go, a nice little roundup of the blooming flowers in St. Louis back in 1900 on this day. And then in 1935 on this day, Tom Keneally was born, the Australian novelist. He is most widely known for his nonfiction novel Schindler's Ark, which was adapted into Steven Spielberg's 1993 Academy Award-winning film for Best Picture, Schindler's List. Now, as a child, Tom suffered from terrible asthma. He wrote, "I was frequently sick, particularly with asthma, for which there was no proper treatment then." And so in September of 2009, you can imagine how pleased Tom was to help open the brand new asthma and allergy friendly garden in the Eden Display Gardens in Sydney. A first of its kind in Australia, the garden was developed by Eden by Design with guidance from the Asthma Foundation in New South Wales to help people living with asthma and allergies enjoy the benefits of gardening. Now, one of the keys for asthmatics and allergy sufferers is to select low allergen plants and female trees. Some tree species are distinctly male or female, and the male plant produces pollen, and the female plants are often less triggering for folks with allergies. Now, that's not always the case, but in general, that is what you want to remember, that it's the male plants that are problematic for asthma and allergy sufferers. Now, other tips for people with asthma and allergies include gardening in the morning when the grass is still wet with dew. That helps keep the pollen on the ground, that moisture. Avoid gardening on windy days when pollen is in the air. Same goes for mowing the lawn. Don't do that on windy days. And then after being in the garden, make sure to shower and change your clothes to remove any allergens that are on your body or clothes. And the same goes for pets. Sometimes if I'm out all day with Max and then I bring him inside, it doesn't make any sense for me to shower up and change if I don't do the same thing with him. So he often gets a shower too when we come in from a long day in the garden. All right, it's time for today's Unearthed Words. Today's Unearthed Words come to us from the New York Times best-selling author Karen White. This is an excerpt from her book called The Beech Trees. I looked around the garden, the sun feeling warm on my back. So why are you here? I would think you'd want to be as far away from a hurricane as possible. She looked at me as if I'd just suggested streaking down the beach. It took her a moment to answer. Because this is home. She wanted to see if the words registered with me, but I just looked back at her, not understanding at all. After a deep breath, she looked up at a tall oak tree beyond the garden, its leaves still green against the early October sky, the limbs now thick with foliage. Because the water recedes and the sun comes out and the trees grow back. Because she spread her hands, indicated the garden and the trees, and I imagined the entire peninsula of Biloxi. Because we've learned that a great tragedy gives us opportunities for great kindness. It's like a needed reminder that the human spirit is alive and well, despite all the evidence to the contrary. She lowered her hands to her sides. I figured I wasn't dead, so I must not be done. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The New Shade Garden by Ken Drews. This book came out in 2015, and the subtitle is Creating a Lush Oasis in the Age of Climate Change. In this book, Ken Drews does it again. He provides another comprehensive guide. But this time, he focuses on shade plants and our changing climate. Ken's conversational writing style makes his advice stickier and easier to implement. Today, gardeners need to be planning for the conditions their gardens may face long-term in order to maximize their efforts and investment. What shade plants are best if you have deer? How can I have a shade garden and also water less? What are the best plants for color in the shade garden of the future? These are the questions that current and future generations of gardeners face. Beauty is still a garden goal, but today's gardener is looking for earth-friendly, climate-wise, and super functional plants. This book is 256 pages of everything you need to know to create or upgrade a shade garden from a modern plant master. You can get a copy of The New Shade Garden by Ken Drews and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $30. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, October 7th, in 1939, that Clive James was born. He was an Australian-born British literary critic, poet, lyricist, novelist, and memoirist. In 1972, Clive gained notoriety as a television critic for The Observer. His voice was unique, and his writing reflected his wry and intelligent humor. Then, 11 years ago, in 2010, Clive was diagnosed with both emphysema and leukemia. As one might expect, his deteriorating health impacted his work, and Clive began using his poetry to write his earthly goodbyes. One day in 2014, his daughter gifted him with a tree, and he wrote a touching poem called Japanese Maple. Clive worried that he wouldn't live to see the tree change color in the fall. Here are the words he wrote from that particular verse. My daughter's choice. The maple tree is new. Come autumn, and its leaves will turn to flame. What I must do is live to see that. That will end the game for me, though life continues all the same. Clive James enjoyed several autumns with that tree. He died in 2019. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove and Wyoming, Minnesota. If you want to read today's show notes, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. And don't forget that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can always get in touch by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.